there's a lot of like just, you're in a really dark spot in your life, right? But even when you're in dark places in your life, you can still see the light. You can still appreciate that people are working to get you safe. You can still appreciate how good of friends you have and how good of ski partners you have. Like you're not totally overwhelmed by that darkness and that pain.
If John Muir were alive today, he might say something like, "The mountains are calling, and I must go, because the rest of the world is freaking me out, man." Well, at least it feels like that on some days. And if the mountains are part of your everyday life and help you define yourself as an individual, yes, they're going to call you and you will go. At least in part because they can help us forget some of the things that we'd rather not face down in the human world. Maybe you're drowning in your email box, your medical bills, in the line at the post office. Or maybe it goes deeper and you've lost someone really special. And the only thing that can really fill the gaping hole in your heart is a nice long walk in the woods with a good friend and your dog. And so you just head out the door, grab your gear, and go. At least out there, you can reach out and grab onto something tangible. You can feel the rough edge of a piece of granite. You can hear the wind howling in your ears, and you can feel the roar of a mountain creek all the way down to the depths of your stomach. You can smell how the damp earth soaks up the rain in the Tetons, and how the flowers at the height of summer promise renewal and life for so many creatures big and small. And how refreshing is that reminder to know that you are just a small piece of something much bigger. And so you leave all that other stuff behind, set it aside, go celebrate life in the mountains, and come back to face the world on another day. Thank you for joining us for another season of the Fine Line Podcast. I'm Matt Hansen. This is our 9th season of bringing you stories about adventure, risk, and rescue in the backcountry of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. The show's original producer and my good friend, Rebecca Huntington, released the first episode in July of 2016. Ever since, we have tried to bring you stories from people who reveal how accidents happen, how they made some mistakes, and how the rest of us can learn how to avoid those mistakes in our own backcountry adventures. If you're familiar with the Fine Line, you know how important it is that we recognize the commitment and dedication of our local first responders, who come out to help us without really asking for anything in return, except for maybe that we learn our lessons for the next time. To begin this season, we're going to be diving into that so-called escape hatch into the mountains. It's true that a good day in the mountains can help us find clarity and answers to some of the problems we face down in the valley below. And yes, it's possible to briefly shelve all those uncomfortable and stressful parts of your life that might be freaking you out. But as we're about to hear, those things never really go away. And so what happens when those sandbags of your life start to weigh you down against the protocols that we ordinarily rely on to keep us and our partners safe? What happens when that stress rises up and clouds your vision right when you reach the crux? Right when you reach out to grab onto something, and it's not there. We're going to try to answer that question in this kickoff to Season 9, where we explore a ski mountaineering accident that occurred on May 18th, 2024. Thank you so much for being here. This is The Fine Line from Backcountry Zero, a project of the Teton County Search and Rescue Foundation to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries in the Jackson Hole backcountry. Ride the Tram, Ski the Shoe begins right after this.
Hey, I'm Colby Cox, co-founder of Roadhouse Brewing. We're stoked to bring you this episode of The Fine Line. As a paraglider, skier, dad, and homebrewer turned brewery owner, I chase the weird, the wild, and the wonderful. I believe in pushing boundaries, following fish, flying into the clouds, and coming back with a story. But the backcountry doesn't always let you write the ending. I've learned to respect the elements and know my limits. Still, stuff happens. That's why Teton County Search and Rescue means so much to all of us at Roadhouse. And when you do make it back, there's nothing better than swapping stories over a cold beer. You'll find us at the tap room or in downtown Jackson on the town square, weeknights, weekends, there's never a wrong time to raise a glass to making it home. So stay safe out there, and remember, don't be late to happy hour. You can check us out on Instagram at Roadhouse Beer, or look at our website, roadhousebrewery.com.
Well, this year it kind of came out with a text between Tanner and I, and it probably said something like, ride the tram, ski the shoe.
Yeah, that's correct.
And, as soon as the village announces when their first day of the tram is going to be, Tanner and I get in touch if we're not already in touch, and we talk about our plans. It's a tradition of ours to go up the tram and ski horseshoe and ski up run in granite. The first day that it opens for the tourist season or the summer season, there's not a lot of like, oh, hey, do you want to go? It's more of, they set the date, can we go? And we go for it. I'm Mark Fellermann. I own Enclosure Land Survey. I moved to Jackson in the year 2000, and I probably started skiing somewhere around 1979. I grew up in Minnesota, and I think it's pretty common there for kids to have their first steps on skis rather than on their feet without skis. So I was trouncing around in the woods pretty young. I also am known as Redbeard, mostly in the ski community. Skiing is absolutely what brought me to Jackson. It wasn't really on my radar. I was kind of lost after college and didn't really have a lot of direction as far as what I wanted to do. And I had some friends that had been coming out here working at a dude ranch, and they told me that I needed to come along. And so I did what hundreds, if not thousands, of Jackson locals have done. I moved here for a summer, and I never left.
I came here to kind of further my ski guide training, and I really wanted to be a ski guide, but it seems like the closer I got to achieving that, the less I wanted to do it, and I just wanted to keep skiing. Kind of struggled with that off and on for years, but here I am, still not a ski guide. My name is Tanner Flanagan. I live in Driggs, and I came to Jackson in the winter of 2005-2006. I'm from Colorado originally, so I've been skiing since I can remember. I am a house painter, self-employed, so kind of doing my own thing. I've been painting since about high school. The same kind of job choice as Redbeard, it's not very busy in the winter, so that's good. I would do other jobs in the winter for a long time. I was a ski tuner at Pepe's, a shop right at the mountain, at the base of the mountain there. Kind of allowed me to ski all the time, just have fun. Now I have a daughter, so I get to share my passion with her. She's already 5. So yeah, that time has been flying by, for sure.
Mark Fellermann and Tanner Flanagan have been ski partners for years. They know each other so well that they know what the other wants to ski and how to ski it. They think so much alike that they even tend to finish each other's sentences. On the morning of May 18th, they met at the Granite Canyon Trailhead in Grand Teton National Park. They left one car there for a shuttle and then drove another vehicle to Teton Village, where they were excited to jump on the tram for the opening day of the summer tram season.
It was a sunny, cold morning, as I remember. It had been really cold overnight, definitely had a deep freeze overnight. Yeah, I just remember it being really sunny and crisp. The usual suspects were on the tram dock. When you start skiing the tram on the first day of the summer season, it just seems like it's the same shady characters that show up every year. Don't have anything better to do.
And the stoke is definitely high.
Yeah.
Free ride to the top again. Not just us, everyone else on the tram is really excited too to get back up there. Last spring was pretty good. It stayed cold. The bottom hadn't melted out yet. So everyone was excited to get full 4,000-foot runs.
And you can't ski inbounds when it reopens for the summer. You have to ski out of bounds, and there's a fair number of sightseers there too. And the vast majority of folks head south. They head over towards Cody, and I think people like to ski 4 shadows and no shadows and powder 8s. We always go the opposite direction. We were talking a little bit about conditions and what we thought it would be like. There was one time that Tanner and I and another friend had skied horseshoe on the first day of the Tram, and it was horrendous. It was totally refrozen, basically blue ice.
With rocks frozen into it.
Yeah. For this mission, there's a lot of things that we would bring on a day in the park that we don't bring because of the Tram access, because of the proximity to civilization, so to speak. But it was more exercise and taking items out of my pack. I think I had sneakers in.
Yep, sneakers.
That's kind of the one oddball thing. But other than that, to be totally honest, I took out my extra layer. I took out my Avi gear. Yeah, added a rad line, had a BL escaper, and belay device and ways to clip in and back up your rappel and all of that kind of gear.
And pretty slim on technical kit too, like no crampons or ice axe or.
We decided to
like
bring
that.
axes.
Or did we?
Yeah, because we correctly assumed that the anchor would be buried because no one had been in there a while and a lot of snow had fallen and flushed through. So we did decide to bring our axes to dig out the anchor, and we were glad we did. From the top of the Tram, you can click in right on the Tram dock. And from the top of the Tram, you ski a pretty wide open slope down past the top of the Haas Couloir to the top of Horseshoe. And that part you can see. You can see from the top of the Tram to where you actually drop in the couloir. And those conditions can be anything from, beautiful powder in the middle of winter. I think I had some of my worst skiing ever once there with some beautiful chicken heads to navigate. On this trip, it was good corn. It was real good skiing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right until the shade line where it pinches down, really close to the rappel point. It was really good. And then it got pretty hard. And it's pretty steep. We were trying to guess at the slope angle. We never measured it, but definitely high 40s.
Definitely steep in there.
We definitely were prepared to rappel down in there. We do like to rappel with our skis on. So even though there's a little rock face you kind of got to go over, that's who we are.
Yeah, and I would say in the spring it's almost always a rappel. In winter there's a much higher chance that you ski down in it and decide to take the jump or just ski through. But in spring it's almost always a rappel.
And sometimes there's a little snow fin that kind of gets up on the side that you can climb down. And later on, that's what I used to down climb. But you just don't know. You can't see it until you're up on the edge of the cliff. It's pretty blind.
Yeah, and when we were getting the anchor exposed, and that's like the steepest place that you are in the couloir. So you're kind of like plastered up against the side and kind of wishing you could do something to secure yourself. And there's a little bit of a kind of a ledge where the rock and the snow meet, and so you can kind of stick a hand in there and hold on while you get the anchor free and get to a place where you can kind of get off your edges. I decided to go first. I was packing the rope and figured it made sense for me to get to the anchor first and kind of get that set up. I had a new piece of equipment that I hadn't used. I had a BL escaper that I had never used before and was interested in giving that a try. We took Tanner's 30-meter rad line and the escaper, which was, more than enough rope.
Can you explain that BL escaper for us, for people who might not be familiar with it?
So it is a piece of equipment that allows you to create a loop at an anchor and then thread one cord down from that one strand rather than 2 strands when you're rappelling off an anchor. Allows you to send one strand down, so you can either use half the rope or go double the distance. And then when you get to the bottom, you yank on the line many times, and with each pull on the line, it loosens it just a little bit. So eventually it'll come free, but the idea is that while you have continuous pressure on it while you're rappelling, it will not come free.
And this was a new device for you?
It was new for me. I hadn't even been party to someone using it. I had seen it. I had seen it way more in Chamonix amongst the guides there than I had around here. I had heard some Americans talk pretty unfavorably about them, and I decided to pick one up while I was in Chamonix and didn't have occasion to use it while I was there, and this was kind of the first opportunity to see what I thought of it. So I clip into the anchor after we get it exposed. I'm kind of immediately feeling out of my element, kind of uncomfortable. The stance there is really steep, like we talked about. I haven't set up my hard point between my harness and the anchor in a way that I like the distance that I'm hanging at. I feel really awkward. I kind of, up to that point, I felt great. The turns down to the anchor were perfect corn. Like we said, it's nice and steep, so they're fun turns in the sun. And then right before the anchor, right before you go into the shade, it's firm. It's like concrete. So my kind of disposition changed rapidly, where I kind of felt like a neophyte again. I didn't feel like it was my first rappel, but I didn't feel like I had been in there dozens of times. In retrospect, I probably should have made an adjustment right then and there and changed the length of my tether to the anchor so I felt more comfortable, and I just kind of bowled ahead. I just continued to set up the rappel. I also was regretting not taking the time to practice with the escaper beforehand. I had a lot of things on my mind. I think mental health was the number one reason for my accident. I think that the cloud of my life, the loss I had experienced in the previous months, I had I had lost my second parent, and I had also lost a long-term relationship, and I was working through those things in my brain and didn't really feel fully present. And even the day before, when I probably would have taken out the escaper and practiced with it, I just couldn't be bothered. I just had too much in my life, too much going on. I'm kind of shocked that I didn't take the time to just mess with it and geek out with it on hanging off a porch or something. It's not like me at all to not do that with a piece of new equipment. So looking back on the situation, that was kind of odd that I had this brand new piece of equipment in my bag that I'd never used, and I was about to use it. So I'm kind of putting the rappel together. The anchor is a piton and a nut. It's been there forever. I've replaced the cord on it a few times. Others have replaced the cord on it. We definitely, exposed the piton and the nut and kind of looked at them, checked the anchor to see if we liked it, and that was all fine. And I was really just, besides the distance of my tether, I was really cruxing out on setting up the escaper correctly. There's like a black mark on the cord, and I erroneously thought that had to be to the point before all the crisscrossing pieces of the escaper, and really it needed to go through all those crisscrossing pieces and be a much smaller ring in diameter. So I had literally not assembled the escaper properly, and just had way too many other things on my mind to to be worried about it. I think there might have been a level of thinking that nothing more could go wrong in my life. I felt like I had really been put through the ringer the previous months, and maybe there was something like, oh, come on, I can't have anything else go wrong right now. Like, I've got plenty. I thought I had it, and I wasn't able to wait it, which is just a huge no-no in rappelling. Like, while you're still tethered to the anchor, you need to wait your rappel. And I didn't. I unclipped my tether from the anchor. Tanner said something like, "You all good?" And I said something like, "Yep, fantastic." And I put my hand on my waist and flipped backwards from sideways with my skis on, thinking that in a very short amount of distance, I was going to go onto the anchor and I was going to stop, and then I could start rappelling. But instead of stopping, I flipped backwards and I began to ski very quickly towards the cliff backwards.
My first thought was like, oh, that's not supposed to happen. And then kind of as he kept falling and tumbling, there was a big part of my brain that was like, he's going to stop. He's going to be okay. He's Redbeard. And then as he kept cartwheeling down, to get further and further away, and right before I lost sight of him, I noticed he wasn't cartwheeling anymore. He was just kind of sliding. So at that point, I thought he was dead, at least unconscious. It was pretty bad, Then the reality kind of sunk in. He took my rope. Like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
So I had to make some quick decisions there. And my goal was just to get to him, just to see what happened. Was he alive? Was he knocked out? Was he okay? I didn't know. But yeah, the first thing I really remember seeing is all the rope just go right with him.
We'll be right back. This is The Fine Line from Backcountry Zero.
I'm Maddie Johnson, the Preventative Search and Rescue Manager for the Teton County Search and Rescue Foundation. One of the things I love about my job is all the personal connections I get to make during our different Backcountry Zero workshops and events. By creating programs like mental health in the mountains, wilderness medicine for avalanche terrain, digital mapping and navigation, and the Wyoming Snow and Avalanche Workshop, we get to help thousands of people feel more prepared, safe, and empowered in the backcountry every year. And the best part is that these programs help support Teton County Search and Rescue volunteers by developing backcountry users who are committed to good decision-making out in the mountains. Check out our full list of programming at backcountryzero.com. I'm so excited to see you out there.
I started cartwheeling, I think, right after I went over the cliff. And I remember having a moment as I'm cartwheeling thinking, oh, I'm not that effed. Like, my bones aren't broken. I'm cartwheeling, but I've done this before, so I'm not that bad. And the very next turn, I ended up in like a scorpion position where my hands and my feet were kind of behind me, and I was leading with my pelvis. And I remember really distinctly, right the moment after I thought I'm not that effed, my pelvis hitting the frozen slope with a crazy amount of force. My pelvis was absolutely in the lead with all of the force. And once that impact happened, I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to bleed out. I knew I had broken things. I thought for sure I was bleeding internally. It hurt really, really, really badly. I don't know how many more times I tomahawked after that, but eventually I stopped tomahawking and I was just sliding, and I was digging my my forearms into the slope just as hard as I could to try to stop, because the thought had crossed my mind that I hadn't hit any rocks or anything other than snow, but I knew there was some big glacier erratics way down in the bottom, and I knew I was heading for those fast. And I was just like with all my might pushing my forearms into the slope as I slid, and eventually came to a stop. I think I had gone something like 1,500 vertical feet from the anchor to where I stopped, somewhere around that distance.
Then I had to take my skis off and climb down from the anchor, climb down the cliff, put skis back on, ski past all his debris that, his backpack had opened up. And there was things everywhere, all throughout the couloir. So I just skied down to him, and he was sitting up. He was awake, and he said he had already called 911. So I was just, my mind exploded. Like, all these are great things.
I was in a lot of pain, mostly my pelvis. My forearms had the worst road rash I had ever experienced, and I still have some scarring on my left arm from it. But I had really removed a lot of skin from my forearms because my jacket had pushed up to my elbows, and it was just my skin pushing into the slope to try to stop.
And it wasn't just on like your forearms; it was like all the way around.
Yeah, on
both sides.
Significant abrasion with the frozen slope. So where the top of the couloir was that beautiful, perfect corn, from the anchor down was concrete. I mean, it just hadn't started to thaw. From the night before. It was still really firm. I was on my belly. I was facing uphill, and my phone was in my chest pocket because we had decided not to bring avalanche gear because it was all, locked up spring conditions. We're not expecting avalanche conditions, so I didn't have a beacon on, so my phone was not in my pants where I wouldn't have been able to reach it very easily at all. It was right in my chest pocket where I could easily reach it. And so I pulled it out and I set it on the snow, and immediately it started like sliding on the snow, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm still on somewhat of a slope. So I almost lost my phone right there when I pulled it out of my pocket. And I saw I had no service, and I punched in 911 and send. And I had heard something about how a phone's signal gets boosted when you dial 911. So I decided to just try. I knew I didn't have service. I decided to just try. I mean, what else do you do? So I waited, it seemed like 30 seconds of it just kind of searching or not really placing the call. And then the next thing I know, I don't even remember hearing a ring. I remember hearing like I don't know, some sort of tone, and then the dispatch was on the line.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
I'm at the bottom of Horseshoe Couloir from the top of the tram. I fell from the propel. I need rescue, please.
Okay. You're at Horseshoe Couloir?
Correct.
All right. What's your name?
Mark Fellermann.
Okay, give me just one sec, Mark. I'm just taking some notes. So you're up at the bottom of the tram?
No, I'm at the bottom of the Horseshoe Couloir. We accessed it from the tram.
Okay. And are you by yourself, Mark?
No, my partner is at the anchor without a rope.
Okay, give me one second. Do you feel pretty injured, Mark? Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm injured.
Okay. Can you tell me about your injuries?
I think my hip and pelvis. I hit my hip and pelvis hard.
Okay. All right, Mark, we're going to get some help to you. Does your partner have a way of getting to you? Mark, I'm sorry. We're going to get help to you. I just need to get some information. Your phone's cutting in and out a little bit.
So I remember we were up on the hillside when you're standing in a group of SAR folks and the page goes off. It's pretty loud. Everyone's phone starts going crazy. My name is Brook Yeomans, and I'm the lucky husband of Jessica Yeomans. We have two amazing kiddos. My son Nico is 19, and my daughter Sita is 16, going to be 17 real soon here. I'm a school teacher. My wife's a school teacher as well. I teach special education at Coulter Elementary School. Go by Mr. Y there. Yeah, I've been living in Jackson since 2000, like you, Redbeard.
Brook Yeomans joined Teton County Search and Rescue as a volunteer in 2021. He says that one of the primary reasons he wanted to be part of the team was to one day be in the position to possibly help someone else. Back in 2015, he was involved in a tragic accident on Mount Moran that took the lives of his two friends, Luke Lynch and Stephen Adamson Jr. Not only were the two men fathers and partners, they were loved far and wide across the community and had made numerous contributions to make Jackson Hole a better place for everyone. It was the kind of deep, tragic loss that no one forgets.
Being on the team means a ton to me because I'm indebted to Teton County Search and Rescue and the Jenny Lake Rangers for just they've showed up for me. And so being able to sort of come full circle and give back and contribute to the team has just meant the world to me. Honestly, it's added a ton to my life purpose, and I really am thankful that I get to be a part of it all. This rescue was particularly special to me because it was on the 9-year anniversary of a tragic accident that I had on Mount Moran. We had on Mount Moran, and lost two of my best friends.
Fast forward almost 9 years to the day of that accident, and Brook is part of the team that gets called out to respond to the base of Horseshoe Couloir. Brook's counterparts that day include fellow volunteers Ian Johnston, Keegan File, and helicopter pilot Steve Wilson, along with Galen Park running incident command.
Galen Park was there, and he said, guys, we're getting a call. Get ready. So we quickly disassembled. Galen runs inside, does his incident command stuff, talks to the board, makes a plan. And in that moment, you were in the park. And so we have established a really strong relationship with the Jenny Lake Rangers, one that we're very thankful for. So Ian chose me for the hasty team, and we rigged up for short haul. And I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I think we left the hangar pretty close, like 15 minutes or something. So it felt fast, but we were ready to go and prepared. Flying over there, we're always talking in the air, making a plan. What's your next move? Thinking forward. And we did a loop around the area and saw that you were actually at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't need to rig a short haul. We could just land, I think, about 100 yards below you.
Yeah, I remember you guys trying to tow in really close to me.
Yeah.
And seeing the skids of the bird kind of float downhill, slide on the slope, even though it wasn't that steep there, it was still firm. I think you guys, if I remember correctly, you guys were trying to land closer.
We were, yeah, that's true. We were hoping to just scoop you right in and keep you under the wash, but it was just a bit too steep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, couldn't pull that off. So we just did a loop and landed below you guys. Ian and I jumped out and grabbed the medical gear that we needed, just threw it on with our packs and our skis, because you always have to be prepared when you get out of the heli that it might not be able to come back, given winds or whatever it be. So we had all of our gear, cruised up to you guys, and it was apparent that Mark was in a lot of pain, but the Tanner was taking really good care of him.
And we didn't have any extra layers or anything, and there was a bit of a icy wind, so I gave him my jacket and it took a while to get him comfortable enough to sit, and once we could get him to sit, I could get him to sit on a backpack, get him off the snow, but then he was pretty cold still,
Yeah, that's what I remember. Besides the pain, I was immediately freezing.
Yeah.
I was immediately shivering.
And I'm notoriously known for being really warm. That's just what
Great trait in a
just what
ski
it
partner.
is. So I used the only thing I had, my body warmth, and gave him a big old bear hug and until you guys got there. I'm trying to stay calm and, listen to what he says and try to make the best choice from there, because there's blood all over him. I don't know what hurts, what's wrong. First thing he says is he made the 911 call. And I don't really much remember what else was said after that, except pelvis hurt, a little bit of a leg complaint, but not much, and mostly just the hardest thing was to find a comfortable position for him. He'd lay down a little bit, and a couple minutes after that, he'd be like, I can't do it. And moving his leg was causing a lot of pain. Once I saw he wasn't bleeding profusely, it was just keep him warm. That's about all I can do.
Yeah, so Ian was lead medical, so his focus becomes the patient, and my focus becomes the scene and the equipment. Quickly realized that Tanner was more than able and solid individual to help, so it sort of became Tanner and myself grabbing things, holding things, undoing buckles. Primary piece of gear that we wanted to get Mark in was the vacuum splint, and what that looks like is when we grab it out of the ship, it's all folded up and it's soft. My job, as Ian's asking you questions, is to get that open, and decided to put that right into what's called the Bowman bag. And so that allowed us to only have to move you once into that position. So it looks like a big orange bag, and then we have that vacuum mattress on top, and there's dozens of buckles, so you got to open those up. And obviously we want to have a pretty swift and slick transport of you. It doesn't seem far, but it's a pretty big lift to get you up, and then all this stuff underneath you, and we're on a firm slope. Didn't really decide to, sometimes we'll be able to make a platform in certain conditions, but that would have been a little too much chiseling. I think Tanner was using an axe at some point.
We dug out a little bit.
Just to like a little edge almost, just to, I remember both Tanner and I were kind of down slope at this point, and then it just becomes a matter of beaming red beer up with 3 people into the vacuum splint. And then what happens with that is then you start buckling, and then we can shape it to them. The other thing we had was a pelvic binder, which Ian and I had heard about your injury thanks to the 911 call and the information you're able to give. So we had that pelvic binder ready to go. What that is a strap that provides tension on your pelvis to hopefully relieve pain.
It's like a big beefy belt.
Big belt.
If you think of like a belt that a boxer wins, big thick belt, just pull off all the metal and it cinches you down.
Meanwhile, the helicopter has gone elsewhere because our plan was to then go into short haul mode, and the Bowman bag has the straps, so we have to get everything secure, and the plan is for Ian and Mark to clip into the rope that's hanging 150 feet below the ship and just go right to an ambulance in the village parking lot.
At this point, I'm feeling better, I will say. I'm psyched that Brook is there and the rest of the SAR team. One thing that followed me through this whole day was each step of the process, there was someone I knew. So, Brook and I weren't close, but when the helicopter showed up, Brook was on the helicopter and I knew Brook. When I got to the ambulance, I knew one of the guys in the ambulance. When I got to the hospital, I knew some of the people in the hospital. So, at every point in this day, there were familiar faces to me. Locals helping locals. That was really comforting. I knew I was in good care. The new ship looked awesome. When it flew into sight, it was just like, hell yeah, here they come. They're going to get me home. They're going to take care of me. you're in a really dark spot in your life, right? But even when you're in dark places in your life, you can still see the light. You can still appreciate that people are working to get you safe. You can still appreciate how good of friends you have and how good of ski partners you have. Like you're not totally overwhelmed by that darkness and that pain. So I'm feeling better. The pelvic binder hurt like hell. I mean, my pelvis was, we'll talk about my injuries, but I was definitely messed up. And when you cinch down on a skeleton that's not together, it hurts. So that was really painful, but I knew these guys are professionals, and they're not trying to hurt me. They're doing the exact opposite. They're trying to reduce my pain. They're trying to get me to safety. Like I knew, even if I was in pain, that all the intentions were heading in the right direction, and that I was starting my recovery in that moment. I'm not shy to go back to the line. It's not the line's fault. It's a beautiful ski line. At one point in my life, it was my favorite ski line. I'll have to maybe reassess that a little bit. New information.
It still can be.
It still can be.
You can still ski it.
I might need to have a redeeming experience, or maybe getting to ski it in powder again. Not on the first tram of the summer.
That might help.
Would probably help.
A full ski through.
Yeah. But lessons learned. Don't believe that you're immune to your life. Your life is there. It's whether it's good, bad, or ugly. The things that are going on in your life, the things that occupy your brain, they are there. You may think that you can kind of push them away, doing some of these activities, but they're not totally gone. And I think that's my biggest lesson, was somehow believing that they weren't there, and then that I could mitigate them in some way, or that it wasn't going to lead to a disastrous outcome. There was a lot of good in that day, but the biggest lesson for me is to practice with new gear. That's kind of a no-brainer. And I think a lot of these lessons come from letting my mental state overrule some of my systems that have been in place since folks taught me how to climb. You can't minimize in any way how much control your brain and your emotions are over your body.
Maybe one of the things, like maybe the answer is to not go, but to maybe be more aware of the things that are going on in our lives that can cause us to make mistakes.
Yeah, I'm not one to ever tell people not to go unless it's a total mismatch for ability and timing or line. There's definitely times where it's a red light. Maybe Tanner and I should have talked, and I should have said, "Hey, I've got a lot on my head. Maybe will you set up the anchor this time?" That could have been one way that we went about it and had the same or a similar experience with mitigating some of that unidentified risk.
Don't assume something that can be known. I just assume Redbeard's been doing this for longer than I have. He's solid. When I asked him, "You all good?" I just assumed he was. The anchor was set up properly. Everything was good. He was good. And I could have double-checked that, and actually known. And we could have talked about the things affecting him mentally. I could have known that, that they were really weighing in a lot more on him than I thought. Yeah, just, be sure.
Yeah, and I think also when you have a ski partner that's solid like Tanner and that you've done certain things many times with, I talk about how there's an unspoken communication. Maybe those are the times where you push into that uncomfortable realm of more communication than you're used to.
Yep. But it's almost like that moment, because you probably felt solid on the upper corn part, and
I felt great.
It went from, those things you were dealing with mentally had a small window in which they showed up. Mm-hmm. Right? You were solid on that day. You made a good plan. It's tradition, whatever it be. And then all of a sudden that window sort of cracked, right? And then what do we do in a short period of time to express that, And I think knowing where your partners are at in their life is something that hopefully we all sort of know, but then how does it affect them in that small window? And what kind of safety systems are you setting up so that you don't need to rely on previous conversations that may or may not have happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, huge takeaways for me on this one. Mark, I'm glad you're okay.
Thanks.
I'm glad you're keeping such good company.
Thanks.
And I really am. And I'm incredibly grateful for this community that supports SAR and everybody that supports SAR and my teammates for working really hard to get me up to speed over the last 4 years so that I can help friends like this. It's, like I said, it's an honor and a privilege. And given that this was the anniversary of the worst day of my life, it meant a lot.
Yeah.
Really did.
Well, it meant a lot to me too.
Mark, just to kind of close us, how are you skiing this winter? Like how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm better than I ought to be. I fully believe I should be dead. I take every moment that I have now as bonus. It's definitely a mental shift on my part. And then physically, like I said, Dr. Provis did an excellent job putting my pelvis back together. I saw Dr. Corey to work on my knee about 10 weeks after the accident, clean up on my knee. And I went to Fort Pines for physical therapy, and Julia and Mark took awesome care of me there. I skied my mono ski on Saturday.
I was going to ask if you'd been monoing yet this year.
So, I got a run in on my mono this year. I went up 10,696 a couple weeks ago, and that's about a 4,000 foot day. I'm sore. My pelvis hurts. My knee was already jacked before the accident and more jacked now. Definitely have more aches and pains. Will never ski as much hard pack as I have in the past. Body just can't handle it. But I'm psyched. I'm really happy to be able to be on my skis. I'm really happy to be able to be on my feet. Not only was Tanner awesome on that day, my support group here in town and all over, friends far and wide, really came together during my recovery. I couldn't drive for several weeks, so I really had to ask for help and lean on friends, and everybody showed up for me, and that was awesome to see. Like, it's hard to raise your hand sometimes and say you need help, but when you raise your hand and everybody shows up, it's an amazing feeling.
Thank you for listening to The Fine Line. That was Mark Fellermann, along with Tanner Flanagan and Teton County Search and Rescue volunteer Brook Yeomans. Our theme song is by Ann and Pete Sibley, accompanied by fresh new tunes by the Victor, Idaho-based musician Ben Winship. The cover art is by Jen Reddy. Editing and sound are by Melinda Binks. My name is Matt Hansen. This interview was recorded in the studios of KHOL 89.1 FM in Jackson. The Fine Line is produced by Backcountry Zero, an initiative from the Teton County Search and Rescue Foundation that uses education, outreach, and storytelling to prevent backcountry accidents. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and listen every Thursday at 2 p.m. on KHOL. We will have a new episode for you in just a few weeks. Learn more at backcountryzero.com.